As soon as you start to say that you're exercising to lose weight, improve your blood pressure, even live longer, and again, all these are good reasons to exercise, that's so distal from when you're performing the activity, having eating healthy, sleeping, exercising, that works directly against our evolutionary biology that's driven for instant gratification. Living longer, you're not going to know if that happened for 5 decades from now. But if you move or if you eat healthy, that you feel better right afterwards.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your health coach and host, Jenn, always here with you every week for wellness without the weirdness. Joining me today is a new voice for some of you, Michael Stack. Mike, welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries.
Thank you, Jen. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and I should say go blue.
Go blue indeed, yes.
So fill everybody in. I say some of you on the familiar voice because Michael is the host of the podcast, the Wellness Paradox podcast, which you may have heard a little second in Plug City here. So check out the episode from June 26th of 2024 featuring yours truly. Now, the Wellness Paradox, by the way, is a podcast focused more on the fitness and wellness industry, more of a business podcast. But if that's you, I highly recommend heading over and having a listen. Mike, what are a couple of your favorite episodes?
I'd say my favorite episode was I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Kenneth Cooper. And Dr. Cooper is in his mid-90s. He's still a practicing physician at the Cooper Clinic in Dallas, Texas. He is the father of modern aerobic exercise. I sometimes wonder if the fitness industry exists today without Dr. Cooper. And the interesting thing about Dr. Cooper is he started to recommend that people ran or did aerobics to improve their fitness. They threatened to take his medical license away because they said that he would kill more people than he would help. Dr. Cooper has certainly proven that wrong. I interviewed him on a Friday afternoon. He had worked all morning seeing patients. He had just gotten done with the workout, and he sat down with me for an interview. So I've had a lot of amazing guests on my podcast, a lot of people I was very excited to talk to, yourself included. But talking to Dr. Cooper was a bucket list item among the bucket list items that you could possibly have for a lifetime. So I highly recommend that. I think it was episode 95 or 96. So it was recent, but not very recent.
Amazing. Oh, I can't wait to go listen to that one. And then as long as we're in Plug City, here's another one, because if you are listening the day this goes live, it is July 24th. Last chance for Salad with a Side of Fries Live, which is July 25th in New York City. This is a live in-person podcast recording and event celebrating 5 years of Salad with a Side of Fries. So you want to be there. Here's what I'm going to tell you. The swag bag. 2 days into reaching out for contributions to the swag bag, its value is almost $1,000. The whole programming piece of it is highly interactive, lots of Q&A. If you've ever wanted to be on a podcast, jump in, be there. So if you're at this point, if you might need to be in commutable distance of New York City to join us. Oh, and then, okay, another little sneak peek. The nutrition nugget that I'm doing at the live event is visual. So it can only be in person. So a little sneak peek there. So like I said, if you're in commutable distance to New York City, jump in, get the tickets. The link will be in the episode notes and of course on all social media. Only a few left, by the way. So I can't wait to see you. Okay, Mike, fitting that we are having this conversation because you and I both come to this from like sort of different sides, right? Like you're from the exercise physiology side. I'm coming to it from the nutrition and coaching side.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're going to talk about is untying the knot of fitness and changing our body, specifically like body composition stuff. I think some of that is like what motivates us and how we choose different kinds of movement. Mike, what was the first thing that popped to mind when I was like, this is what we're talking about?
I'm very always very excited to talk about this topic because I think people conflate what exercise is actually meant for them to have happen in their bodies with what actually happens. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that I'm sure we'll get into. But this is a conversation that over my, 2+ decades in the industry, I spend a lot of time having and try to dispel a lot of the myth and misconception around what appropriate expectations are or aren't for exercise.
Okay. I love it so much. I want to just jump right in, but super quick. One more thing. We have to tell our members what they're getting this week. All right, members, your recipe this week is for peanut butter banana ice cream. And I don't know about you, but the temperatures this time of year, it's summer. It makes ice cream sound like the perfect thing every day. So here's a healthier ice cream that's not only delicious, but it also only has 3 ingredients. And the third one's optional. So you also probably already have all these things already in your house. It is absolutely delicious and easy. And then in addition, fitting for today's conversation, I'm sending you an article that offers a bunch of ideas for how to get more activity in your day without carving out dedicated time or having to go to a gym. So if you want this recipe or this curated article, be sure you're a member. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions. It's a total deal. I say it all the time. It's a steal because when you take advantage of the full offerings, you save far more than that $10 cost. It's a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, being a member supports this podcast and this community so we can continue to bring you new episodes and experts every week. So remember, you are going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. Or actually, there's a link in the episode notes, and that's a lot easier because then you don't have to remember the whole thing. Once you're there, you click the little I agree, and then support now, enter your email and payment info, click subscribe, and you're all set. You'll get the recipe for the healthier peanut butter banana ice cream and the article, How to Get More Movement and Activity in Your Day Without the Gym. Okay, Mike. Untangling the web, untying the knot, whatever we want to call it. What are some of the key things that you feel like we need to understand as far as how we got here?
Yeah, I think, and that's an important place to start. And I think, we have capitalism and commercialization to thank for this. If you think of kind of the long history of the diet industry and the commercial fitness industry, they have always marketed the outcomes that you should be looking for as something body composition based. Now, even if that they didn't explicitly do that by saying, hey, come here to lose weight or get ripped or get your beach bod, the imagery and messaging that has always been used by the diet industry and the fitness industry has been disproportionately young, disproportionately in amazing shape, and also disproportionately Caucasian, which is another conversation. But but I think that the expectation, both explicitly and implicitly, by those two industries has really driven what the consumer tends to expect to get out of a movement or an exercise experience or a nutrition experience, when in fact, looking better or losing weight or whatever terminology you want to put around that body composition centric outcome, quite often, particularly with regard to exercise, but also with regard to nutrition, it is a side effect of a good diet and a good movement or exercise program. It is not a direct effect. And so I think how we got here was that, the commercialization drove the consumer expectation to this point. And because the way you feel about the way you look is an intensely personal and emotional thing, I think it plays on people's emotions and their emotional state so much more than just what would, exercising to improve your blood pressure or eating healthy to improve your cholesterol. Those things don't, although they're very, very important, they don't seem to have the same emotional valence that you have with your body composition and the way you look. So I think it's that unique combination of factors. I've spent 20 plus years in the commercial fitness industry, and we're as guilty of this as anyone. So the point we're at, I think we have to take some responsibility for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, on the nutrition side, it's also there too. I think it is this, broad stroke diet culture that leads us here. And I think the other interesting thing about it is that sometimes people don't identify it for themselves. Like, they're not totally sure that this sounds like them or that they have this, as you were saying, like conflated sense of what this is about. So I often see, I'm curious if you see this or experience it, like when people tell me, like, and this happens a lot when I do discovery calls, they will say, I hate the gym. I will never be a workout person. Or then there's also the people who are working out super hard all the time, not allowing themselves a day off. I also hear it with clients where they take a day off or their schedule is such that they couldn't, get that same intense workout in a day. And they look in the mirror and say that they can see a difference.
Yeah, I mean, all of those true. I've seen all of those, throughout the years. And I think there are a lot of people, and I'm sure this is something we can get into as we go. In fact, I think it ties in nicely to the resource you're providing people on ways to move without going to the gym. But yeah, there are many people that say they're not gym people. And the data would bear that out. The commercial fitness industry, for pretty much its entirety of its existence, has had a market penetration of about 15 to 20%. About 15 to 20% of the American public goes to a gym and fitness center at any one given time. So that means disproportionately more people are not gym people than are gym people. And I think that part of the messaging that the industry has used over time has turned a lot of people off from being gym people. And everything you just said a second ago, there's psychological underpinnings to all of that. This is not a conversation necessarily around physiology. This is more a conversation around emotions and psychology.
Yeah, 1,000%. And even the expectation that being a gym person is required to lead a healthful life is part of this twisted psychology.
Yeah, well, and if you think about it for a second, like the commercial culture that drove that, at least on the fitness side, wants you to be a gym person, because if you're not and you're moving and it's not in a gym, then the gym's not making any money, and that's how they make their money. So, I think it's important to understand that you could be very, very healthy just by moving throughout the course of your day, just by reducing your sedentary and your sitting time. If you look at the blue zones around the world as an example, these places in the world, Nagoya, Costa Rica, Okinawa, Japan, where people have lived into their hundreds, there's not a Planet Fitness in sight. There's not a crunch in sight. These are people that are just doing movement during their daily life, and the active choice is the easy choice. And these are incredibly healthy individuals that live to ripe old ages. So, yeah, we've definitely been sold a bill of goods that you have to go to the gym to be healthy.
1,000%. And speaking of blue zones, we did an episode a couple months ago on blue zones. And, really the lessons, like, we can replicate a lot of those pieces in our own communities and in our own lives. And this is exactly one of them, right? Like making the active choice the easy choice, more resistance on the thing that's sedentary, And I think part of this psychology piece, because you're 1,000% right? Like, we can't have this conversation without addressing that side of it. And I think I'm like hesitating to say this because it makes me want to like roll my eyes whenever people are like, well, what's your why? Right? Like, I get it. But it's more about understanding the motivation behind the movement. And so even thinking about the blue zones, right? Like, I think there's a connection between going to the gym, and we go to the gym because we hate our bodies and we're fighting our bodies and we want to change our bodies, versus the blue zones where there is movement and activity because that's just how they live their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, certainly there are some people that go to the gym just because they like to go to the gym, right? But I think, the people that go there with the motivation that they are going there to transform their bodies, they're almost to some great extent setting themselves up for failure before they've even, walked through the door. And I do agree that the, what's your why can kind of be an eye-rolling statement. But from a coaching perspective, rather if you're coaching an individual or if you're self-coaching, I think understanding what your motivations are, your deep motivations are so critically important, because ultimately, if your goal is just simply to look better or to meet some sort of societal standard of what looking good is, by definition, that is extrinsic motivation, external motivation. And we know people don't persist for very long when external motivation exists. Carrots and sticks only work for so long. If we can really get to the deep, meaningful reason that somebody is doing something, then we could take external motivation and transition it to internal or intrinsic motivation, which is more closely tied with your identity and your values and what's meaningful. And people tend to not give up on things when it's intrinsically based.
Yes. And like I sort of describe it as even shifting our motivation from the negative to the positive, from what we don't want to what we do want. So I'm doing this activity because I want to feel energized. I want to sleep well. I want to be able to show up and have patience for the kids in my life or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's very interesting. If you look at, a principle from economics called loss aversion, people tend to, at least on the external level, tend to be more motivated to avoid something bad than to get something good. But that's a really short-term way to look at things, because you're only going to push back on avoiding something bad for so long until you just get exhausted, because it's such an extrinsically driven path. So yeah, I think it's a matter of reframing not what you want to avoid, but what you're trying to gain or move towards.
Exactly. And it's interesting too, even in thinking about this, like I was saying, what people say to me in a discovery call or when I hear this. And I often don't even talk about it at the beginning, because this is such a tight knot and the psychology around it and the conviction around it is so strong that I just let this be a thing and we'll get to it in time, but like, I think if I said this to people, like I'll share a story in a minute, but like if I said this to people in the beginning, they'd be like, I think you're wrong and you're psychotic and we probably won't work together.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the challenge here is a lot of people bring this expectation through the door that, you're a nutrition person, I'm an exercise person, I'm coming here because I need you to help me lose weight and look better. Again, because of the societal standards. Sometimes, we get a lot of referrals from medical professionals. Sometimes doctors will say this to people that, hey, you need to lose weight to be healthier, which, that's a whole very interesting conversation as to how factual something like that is. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want you to help me lose weight or look better or feel better about the way I look or whatever terminology they use, if your first response is, well, okay, thank you for telling me that, but let me tell you why that's not the way to think about this, and you haven't developed rapport with that person yet, then that conversation's going to stop really, really quick. So, sometimes, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes I've almost had to, let the client fail on the plan that they think will work, so they're able to see that they need to go down an alternative path. It's like you almost you control the crash landing to the extent that you can, and then you're kind of there to help insert a new plan. But it's very challenging to change that paradigm when somebody walks through your door, physically or in person or virtually rather.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So normally that's what happens before they come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows up in my work, not insofar as, having to let them do their thing and fail, but insofar as to point out why what we're recommending or the conversation we're having is so counter to what they've attempted before.
Mm-hmm.
And when we explain it also in the context of like, that's why before when you did this thing, you experienced that outcome. Well, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of, I often say, like, instead of having to feel like you're climbing Mount Everest naked and barefoot, like here, right? This is the appropriate attire and the equipment and just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. Like that normally happens before they come into my world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's good, when that does have the opportunity to happen. I mean, our businesses are slightly different.
Sure.
I'm a brick and mortar business, and you is kind of more of a virtual business. I do think we get people who come through the door with their convictions being a little stronger. And again, my business also getting referrals pretty significantly from physicians, where somebody's gone to their doctor and they say, I need to lose weight. The doctor, does really play that narrative strongly in people's heads sometimes. It's a challenge. And I think, as coaches, I think we're always trying to balance an individual's, autonomy with what is the correct evidence-based path to follow. And, from a coaching perspective, that is, very much a challenging thing.
Yeah. And it's also, to your point too, with the physicians, their language and their knowledge base around this is limited. And, our listeners are much more in the know than the average person, and potentially than certain, physicians. But there's a piece of saying, okay, here's the other side of the coin, in how we want to think about this and how we can actually get to the desired outcome, with a reframe.
Yeah. And I think it's just that. It's trying to get crystal clear on what that desired outcome actually is. Because I think what a lot of people say, they want to lose weight or they want to look better, I don't actually think that's what they really mean at the end of the day. I think they might mean it to some degree, but I think there's something that's, much, much deeper that they're really looking for. And, going through that exploration process on a psychological level, is critical, because for the most part, looking better, losing weight, whatever the term you want to put on it, tends to be a very superficial way to think of an outcome for a healthy diet or for a good exercise program.
Absolutely. Funny. And this ties back to what we were saying before about the why. And it also ties into the episode that's coming out next week, where we talk a lot about that underlying desired outcome is self-worth. And so I almost feel like our conversation is the prerequisite for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is always something around that self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence. I mean, whatever words that you want to put on there. And that's a very complicated and heavy thing. And it is something that is not like stepping on the scale. It's difficult to measure. It's messy. But I think, acknowledgement of, this is something more than just the number on the scale or the way you feel on a given day you look in the mirror, is an important first start. A lot of what this conversation is, Jen, is we're kind of talking about reframing, expectations and kind of, deprogramming the way we've been programmed to think about healthy eating and exercise.
Absolutely. So I want to get into the how of that, right? Because as we've said, easier said than done, a conversation versus the reality. You and I both have tools and ways that we do this for ourselves and clients. Really quick, before we do that, let's take a quick break to highlight our partner for this episode. Big thanks to DNA Miracles for supporting Salad with a Side of Fries. Because every child is a miracle, DNA Miracles provides the highest quality body and wellness products designed for babies, children, and expectant mothers. All products are gentle, easy to use, and 100% effective when used as directed. DNA Miracles partner with leading health professionals and scientists who follow the highest standards in ingredient selection to create the most effective skin, hair, and health solutions. As natural as possible, DNA Miracles is the best and safest option on the market for you and your little miracle. From expert pediatricians to real family testimonials, everyone has fallen in love with DNA Miracles. So I always attempt to tie our partner into the topic of the episode. I think for today, all I can say is that a lot of our ideas about fitness and nutrition come from what we see and experience as kids. And one way that we can really support them and a healthy relationship is with a daily multivitamin and doing something for ourselves, for our health every single day. So DNA Miracles makes that really easy with 3 different multivitamin options to help the littles in your life. 1 is a chewable, 2 are isotonic capable, which means improved bioavailability, improved absorption and utilization in the body. The DNA Miracles Isotonics Multivitamin Plus was formulated to support the needs of children who need particular nutritional support in the areas of digestive, neurological, and metabolic health. So truly phenomenal formulas that really set up your kid for success each day. And when you're ready to level up, go for the DNA Miracles Essential Omega-3. It really is absolutely delicious. It tastes like a creamsicle. Your kids are probably going to ask you for it. You might need to hide it, but it's so good. And I know you'll agree that the health of your littles is worth a couple dollars a day. And that's, by the way, before your discount for being a Salad with a Side of Fries listener. So to get 10% off and free shipping, text the word miracles, MIRACLES, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word miracles, MIRACLES, to 844-947-4846. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, Mike, what's the first step you take in untying this knot with people?
I think there's one coin, but there's two sides to it. First is just the acknowledgement that it exists. I don't think a lot of people even realize this is the paradigm that they are bringing through the door. And I won't get into all the nuance about, how you create awareness around its existence. But, that's the first side of the coin. The second side of the coin is to get them to understand that it's okay that they think that this is the path they should be going down. It's kind of helping them to realize that they need to work on accepting that they've been sold a bill of goods and that the way they think probably is not going to serve them long term. But those thoughts are going to keep coming up over and over again, because to your point, it's been ingrained in so many people from a young age. I mean, how many people have seen their parents diet or go to the gym because, they want to look better for a class reunion or a wedding or whatever it might be. So I think it's, create awareness and then also foster an environment that allows for acceptance. I'm a big proponent of acceptance and commitment therapy or acceptance commitment training, depending on the context that you're applying it in. And there's even a book called The Weight Escape, WEIGHT, and it's this acceptance commitment therapy approach to weight loss. And a lot of it is based around acceptance. And so I think that's a big part of the process is, acknowledge this exists and accept that the thoughts are going to keep coming up.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I first start with a client, we don't talk about the movement component in depth for about a month. And it's on their radar anyway. And it's almost like by not hyper focusing on it and giving them, other tools and things that we're building on each week, it inherently starts to diminish some of that importance on that activity or the intensity of the activity. And then when we do talk about it more explicitly, it's like, okay, here are sort of the general aspects of what we're looking for out of our movement and the purpose that it serves in the context of human health. And by the way, I say this all the time, just as we know, you were talking about before, like sedentary lifestyle, right? Just as we know it's not human to be sitting all day, it's also not human to sit all day and go berserk for an hour.
Exactly.
So even thinking about it in that context starts to sort of, like if there was a spotlight on the activity, right? It starts to sort of grow the spotlight to see everything on the stage of health rather than hyper-focusing on the one thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we can expand that spotlight analogy to, the kind of the what I call the hierarchy of movement. And I think that, just this realization that, on the most basic level, there is, not being a sedentary, right? Just, every 60 to 90 minutes, getting up and doing some sort of even low intensity movement and all of the significant physical and mental health benefits that accrue just from that. And then, that allows you to be more physically active, which physical activity is any movement you can do during the day, of which exercise is a subset, which is the icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned, right?
Right.
Or maybe the ranch on top of the salad.
Right.
That's what I work for this podcast. But, this is where I think that we've kind of been sold this bill of goods that, you got to exercise to be healthy. You have to move to be healthy. If you want to be fit, and fit could be improving your strength, your endurance, things like that, that's an outcome you have to exercise for. But to be healthy, and look at the World Health Organization's recommendations, look at the Surgeon General's recommendations. It's 150 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity. It doesn't say anything specifically about exercise. So I just think we need to really calibrate our expectations around what movement we do for health and what movement we do for fitness, and realizing that those are related things, but they are separate.
Absolutely. I mean, I say it all the time, you can't outrun your fork, which is also to say there isn't one thing we're going to do for our health that is going to trump or outshine or outdo the other pieces of health.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it is holistic. And I think, we're talking here about movement and nutrition, and there's certainly so much emerging research on, the role of sleep. And, that might be the keystone health behavior that people engage in. And we know that it has, knock-on effects on your nutrition and your movement habits. We've certainly heard the Surgeon General as of late talking about the epidemic of loneliness that's gripping our country and the physical effects that has. So we can't look at health in a vacuum. And I think that, when people myopically focus on diet and exercise because they want to achieve a certain aesthetic or a certain weight, I actually think they start to shortchange a lot of those other items: sleep, social,
Yes.
connections, stress levels go up. So it's very interesting how I think we're starting to widen the aperture on what it means to be healthy. And a conversation like this, is a part of that. Like, I make my money helping people exercise. And I'm here saying, hey, yes, exercise is important, but it's not the end all be all. You basically make your money helping people with nutrition. And you're saying, hey, nutrition's important, but it's also not the end all be all. So I just think it's this recognition that a little bit of all of those good health behaviors, moving, healthy eating, social connection, sleep, a little bit of all of those things are infinitely better than a lot of one of these things or two of these things.
Absolutely. I'm going to point everybody back to, we have a bunch of episodes on sleep, but the most recent one I called Sleep the Ultimate Biohack, right? Like, it's the $100 bill that everybody's stepping over to pick up pennies. And the longevity equation, right, is exactly what you're talking about. And our Blue Zone episode, like all these things, right? It's about how do we get to this place of health and vitality? And it is all of the elements. And so by that token, too, one of the things you said to me last time we were talking was like expanding our definition of what it means to live a healthy life and to include, our mental health and our happiness and our energy and all these pieces that once we start to look at those, I see it with my clients that's when we start to make this shift in the role that these things play.
Yeah. And I think, if the first step that I mentioned earlier was that you kind of realize this exists and accept, the second step in this is just that. It's attach the outcome to eating healthy, exercising, all these other health behaviors to the more immediate benefits rather than the distal benefits. And the immediate benefits of engaging in any health behavior is you feel better. They are psychological benefits, they are emotional benefits, and they're there instantly. As soon as you start to say that you're exercising to lose weight, improve your blood pressure, even live longer. And again, all these are good reasons to exercise. That's so distal from when you're performing the activity, having eating healthy, sleeping, exercising, that works directly against our evolutionary biology that's driven for instant gratification. Living longer, you're not going to know if that happened for 5 decades from now. But if you move or if you eat healthy, that you feel better right afterwards. So if you can attach your outcome and your gratification to something that is more instant, immediate, and assured, because I very rarely do I know someone that goes for a walk that doesn't feel better after they take a walk, the likelihood of your motivation to keep doing it being high is exponentially increased. So I think it's being clear that, those immediate emotional and mental health benefits are critical to long-term adherence and compliance that eventually gets you to all those other things that people want to get out of it. It's just a matter of what you're focusing on.
Absolutely. And the way we do that, right? The way I do it with my clients is with tracking. And we start to track our stress level, our mood, our sleep, our energy, our confidence. And then over time, and again, each day, a couple times, maybe we're checking in on these factors.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, we've got some data. And then we go in to look at it and we say, okay, all the days where energy was a 5 out of 5, all the days where your mood was awesome, all the days where you woke up feeling rested, what do all those days have in common? What's the commonality in what happened the day before all of those days? And we start to see the choices, the movement choices, the nutrition choices, the stress reduction technique choices, right? All the other things that, now going to our other episode, biostack over biohack, right? All those little things that we do every day that stack up to feeling this way. And then we start to say, okay, well, now I want the movement in my day because I want 5 out of 5 energy.
Yeah, I think we lead such a hectic life that we aren't necessarily aware of how our choices are impacting us. And I feel like if we actually took the time, and I'll use this example for the purposes of this episode, if we actually took the time to mindfully eat a fast food meal, I don't know. I don't know how
Sorry,
much.
I can't even think about that experience without laughing.
Yeah, because I don't actually think we would enjoy it very much. And so I think it's what you're talking about with self-monitoring and data collection, which fortunately right now is made so much easier by all the wearable tech and devices we have, is it creates this level of awareness that we simply don't otherwise have as we're going through the motions of our day. And I think as soon as we start to become more mindful about a lot of these things, we can't unlearn what their impact is. Like I can't, now that I'm aware of how my sleep influences how I function, feel, and perform during the day, I can't forget that and unlearn that. It's burned into my consciousness, and you could apply that to any other health behavior. So I think the monitoring and the awareness is so key. And look, people are smart enough to put 2 and 2 together. I think it's nice to have a coach like you or I there to help guide them. But man, somebody even does their own self-monitoring for a little while. They start to figure out what adds up to them feeling better or feeling worse the next day.
Absolutely. And I do caution people a little bit with some of the apps and wearables and the devices, because we will outsource our own experience to the data from the app, especially with sleep. I see it with people where they go, well, I thought I felt great, but the app is telling me I slept like shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, let's not ignore how you actually felt, So there's pieces of that. But I do think oh, you're going to say something. I'll be quiet.
No, I was just, it's funny you talked about outsourcing. I often talk that people outsource their critical thinking to the apps and things like that. And that's very true. It's, that no app is perfect. And this is a different conversation for a different time. But if you actually looked at the validation data on some of these devices, probably a lot of the very popular devices out there, you'd be surprised how much variability exists. So yes, you cannot substitute your lived experience, critical thinking, and common sense for something a fancy, ring or wearable tells you.
Yeah. My head is going to the fitness place in this moment of saying, as you're working on separating the movement from the beating yourself up about things, right? About what your body looks like, or, working out to change your body. One of the things that I sometimes talk about is if you work out with a mirror, and there are mirrors all over gyms, even studios, right? A lot of times we're used to a mirror. Try just facing away from the mirror when you do certain things. I will say for me, like working out in my home over the pandemic and now still, I don't have that mirror anymore. And it changes things tremendously. Where now when I do work out with a mirror, I notice different things. I think about different things while I'm working out when there's a mirror there.
I think that's a really interesting observation. At my facility, we're very intentional about where we put mirrors and where we don't put mirrors. Mirrors have utility. I mean, they definitely allow you to be able to provide some sort of a visual feedback cue of your exercise technique. But I mean, let's be honest, a lot of the people that exercise don't need that degree of precision in their exercise technique. And, after you've done it for a while, you kind of have to ask yourself, am I looking in this mirror because I'm actually trying to look at my exercise technique? Or am I looking in this mirror because I'm, being judgmental and self-critical about the way I look? And you kind of have to ask yourself, it's the latter, is it worth reinforcing that narrative in your head?
Absolutely. So exactly what my head was thinking too, of like, what is it that we're saying to ourselves during every workout?
Mm-hmm.
And funny, in the class that I was in today, the instructor said something to the effect of like, your body is a marvel. And it made me think, right? Like, what if during our movement, we could just sort of have a moment of like, wonder at how amazing this human body is. And thank goodness we don't have to think about which muscles move to make a movement happen and to breathe and to make sure the heart beats and all of these things. Like, the body is an absolute miracle.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because, I teach exercise physiology at U of M, or I have taught it in the past at University of Michigan. These very, very smart kids that are learning about all these nuanced intricacies of the body. And the reality is all of those things happen at a level beneath our consciousness when we exercise. And the fact that the body responds and adapts and can learn motor skills and do all these things, I am, as a physiologist, continually amazed at the marvel that is the human body. And as we learn more about the body and the brain and the effect of all these health behaviors on it, it's even more remarkable what it can do. And I think that's all about how it functions. None of it is about how it looks at the end of the day.
Right. I was interviewed on somebody else's podcast, and we had this conversation about, honestly, like Ozempic and all this stuff that's, in the zeitgeist at the moment. And it was like, we're not all expected to have the same shoe size.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we have this expectation that everybody is supposed to be the same jean size and the same shirt size.
Yeah. I don't know why we have it, but I would suspect it probably goes back to what we talked about in the beginning.
Exactly.
As a culture that favors, thinness and a certain aesthetic. And, it's favored because it's designed to monetize certain products and services that are out there. And I think we really have to ask ourselves, why does it really matter? And like, don't get me wrong, at a certain level of adiposity or weight, there are significant health concerns. But probably the vast majority of people that are listening, they're not at a BMI where their weight is high enough that it's actually an eminent health concern. That doesn't happen until you get north of BMIs of 35 or 40, and if you store a lot of abdominal fat. So I think it's really just kind of, again, it goes back to this thing we've been talking about many times. It's the reframe around, why are you doing this, and what is the real underlying purpose that's meaningful to you?
Yeah, and two thoughts on that. One is that's part of why I think BMI is such a terrible metric, and really looking at body fat percentage and where we're carrying the adipose tissue on the body is so important to look at. All the doctors out there. And then to your point of, again, looking at what motivates us, I think my last thought on this before we wrap things up is sort of like going to that thing of what happens and what we tell ourselves when we take that day off. And whether that's a day off because it's planned or you just have a lot going on or whatever, like I said in the beginning, like the people who take that day and then feel like they can see a difference in the mirror, like it doesn't look the same as if they had worked out that day. And I think, now this is not science, this is my conjecture based on, 17 years of working with clients. I think fundamentally that's not real. The idea of it is coming from an underlying fear that we won't pick it up again. That if we lose the momentum, if we take the day off, unless we beat ourselves up about it, we won't return to the movement the next day or the quality, healthful choices the next day.
Yeah, I don't disagree that may be driving, kind of that underlying thought. What I can tell you from just a scientific perspective is that if you take one day off, there's absolutely nothing that you will be able to discernibly see from a body composition perspective. You might think you're seeing something, but physiology of the human body is not altered, that quickly. But I also think it's accepting that you're going to have that thought. I mean, I know
Yes.
if I take, if my workout schedule gets disrupted and, maybe I have to take an extra off day when I don't take an off day, you do kind of catch yourself looking in the mirror going, oh, what's going on here? And
We all do it.
yeah,
Right.
Not only do I know better but I also understand deeply the science behind it. And my brain still goes there and it tries to tell me a story that isn't true. And so, as I've gotten older, I've just come to accept that that's the story my brain can tell me, but I don't have to pay attention to it at the end of the day. And so I think
1,000%.
I think that is, very, very important. And I'll even go one step further. We know from a physiological perspective that recovery days are absolutely critical. Giving your central nervous system time to rest is it is a rate limiter to health and fitness improvement. If you're looking to improve your health, you're looking to improve your fitness, and you're never giving your central nervous system, the motor parts of your brain, some downtime, you're actually impairing your ability to make positive change. You're not facilitating it. So I think that's, very important to realize is that, there's a bell curve. Too little is bad. Too much is also bad. Somewhere in the middle, that Goldilocks zone is where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key. If there's an outcome from this conversation, it's the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said, we can have the thoughts. We don't have to buy into them.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my other final thought is if you're sitting here listening to this conversation, you're like, yeah, no, I'm not there. That's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a process. I've seen it over and over and over. It is possible and it does happen. It's yet another thing that takes time.
And the psychology sometimes takes much longer than the physiology because these are such ingrained, enculturated, thoughts and emotions that we have. And I think, awareness and acceptance is critical. And to your point, if you're not there yet, that's absolutely okay. But even becoming aware through this conversation that you may need to shift your paradigm a little bit, I think is a very, very important starting point. And I think if you do become more aware of the thing that you're telling yourself around your relationship with certain health behaviors, have them be eating or exercise or using substances or whatever they might be, as soon as you become aware of the narrative that you're telling yourself, then I think you have the opportunity to make a choice as to if you're going to accept that narrative or insert a new one that could be more productive for you. And I think that's what we're suggesting in this conversation is you're not wrong for thinking this way, but if the story that you're telling yourself isn't serving you, then you have the opportunity to change that story.
Yeah. And here's a few ideas for how to get that ball rolling.
Yes.
All right. I think we did a thing, right?
Yeah, very much so.
All right. So friends, on Friday, your Nutrition Nugget bonus episode, we're talking about Thunderbird Real Food energy bars. So actually, our episode July 10th of this year was all about energy, and someone sent me these bars. So we're going to take a look at them if they're an option to add to our repertoire or another product that just has some great marketing. So that is this week's Nutrition Nugget bonus episode on Friday. Be sure to click the follow or the plus sign button wherever you're listening now, and then your app will alert you on Friday when the bonus episode is available for you. As always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. I want to hear your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. Michael Stack, thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Absolutely. Always love chatting with you. And of course, everybody, if you are not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, and most importantly, it supports your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the healthier peanut butter banana ice cream and the article about how to get more movement and activity in your day without the gym. So until next week, remember, you may start in a place of working out to change your body. And over time, you can move to a place of working out and moving because you love your body and yourself. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it and you are worth it. Happy healthy.